Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. A little bit about Concept 3D. We help bring your campus life to life virtually. We have served the higher education community for over a decade with our award-winning interactive maps and tours. Improve your campus communications, student engagement, and student experience with our powerful location-based virtual solutions. I will be your host today. My name is Shiro. I'm the Director of Demand Generation at Concept 3D, and I'm currently speaking from my home in Silverthorne, Colorado. It's getting a little brisky out, so I feel the fall coming up, and I like it. It's nice. Today, I am super excited to have Teege Mettille join us today. Teege is a higher education leader, currently the Director of Enrollment Success at Enroll ML, and he's also the co-host of the Admissions Director's Lunchcast, which is a podcast that you need to go listen to. A little bit more about Teege. He has over a decade of experience in admissions enrollment, serving at institutions like DePaul University and Carroll University as AVP of Admissions and VP of Enrollment, respectively. Teege, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. And where are you joining us from today? And why don't you tell us one fun fact?
Yeah, I am coming to you from just outside of Milwaukee, where fall has not started to hit yet. So it's still fully summer here, but I think we've only got a few weeks before we're catching up to you. A fun fact about me, this is just interesting. I, for 6 years, was the director and then dean of admissions at Northland College, a small school in far northern Wisconsin on Lake Superior, and that was where I first learned to ski. I actually learned to ski the same day as my son. He was 4, and I was not, so he's much more fearless and better than I am, but it's a midlife hobby I picked up that I've enjoyed.
Oh, no way. I had no idea. That's awesome. So I'm sure his learning curve is much is much greater and steeper.
You know, when you're learning to ski without knowing what co-payments and premiums are, you're just willing to try more things than as an adult. So
I love that. Yep. Fearless and both from a mental and a logistical perspective.
Right.
Got it. Awesome. Well, today I wanted to discuss some topics really in your specialty areas that we talked about in a previous call, which is really digging deep into admissions data and breaking those segments into smaller parts. I know you mentioned the 3 factors that you look to that are deciding factors that they're going to melt. And I'd love for you to explain and expand upon that.
Sure. What you're referring to, Shiro, is when I would take the admit pool for the counselors I was supervising or managing and try and break them down into more manageable segments to guide their outreach in the most effective way. I think it would always be easy to just say, call all of your students, right? That's the easiest thing to say, hardest thing to do, and it becomes a waste of time. You're putting effort and resources to students who've already moved on. At the college I started kind of using this approach at, there were 3 actions the students could take that each one had some sort of financial incentive in the aid package. They could visit campus, they could apply for financial aid, and they could have a scholarship interview with their admissions counselor. So what I had started to do to great effect was break it down, and students for all 3 of those, it was a yes or no. They did it or they didn't. And that created about 10 different buckets of activity. They did 1 of the 3, 2 of the 3, 3 of the 3, etc. And that helped the counselors really understand which of their students needed the most outreach and what outreach they needed. I've come to see, while that's really valuable, I think of those 3 markers as like major mile markers on a marathon. It's good to know if someone doesn't make it to mile marker 10, right? They haven't submitted the FAFSA. Mm-hmm. But by and large, by the time they haven't submitted the FAFSA, they're already gone, right? Like they're off the trail so far that you're not going to get them back. It's one of the things what we're doing at Enroll ML that I'm so excited about is really managing not managing, but analyzing and digging into kind of the micro decisions a student is making every day to rise up and share with an admissions counselor. Here's what the data says. This student is trailing off the course to enrollment. And that approach really helps the admissions counselor know who to reach out to, and I think it gives them better job satisfaction too. They're not being asked blindly to call a list of 200 students. Instead, we're able to say either from the major mile markers I was using in the past, or this more intense and thorough machine learning approach that we do at EnrollML, to really know that the effort that they're making is moving students along.
Got it. And is that outreach more personalized? Like, are you having these you said emailing a list of people, are you really just personalizing each email to those people who are hitting those metrics or hitting those scores?
Yeah, it certainly feels more personalized to the students. When I was doing it, again, with the major mile markers, the 3 segments,
right,
there was still a lot of like group messages, right?
Right.
But at that point, it was, there's 58 students in this group, so they should all get a form letter or an email that is specific to the 3 things that they've done. That's progress. That's a lot of progress from what we were doing before, which was just send the same message to everybody who hasn't submitted the FAFSA, if you will. What is helpful about that is it makes the students feel that we're genuinely paying attention to them and kind of tracking them along. If we can say, we see that you visited campus, but we haven't gotten the FAFSA from you, how can we help you with that? What again, I think the gold standard, right, which is really digging into each individual student and not just looking at 3 factors, but maybe 12, 15, 20, and being able to personalize and customize the outreach, which you can do, an admissions counselor can do when the scale of the students in front of them is manageable, which is not something I was able to do with the 3 major buckets that I was looking at.
Got it. So you've actually moved on from 3 to more factors now with EnrollML.
It's one of the reasons I was so excited to join the team at EnrollML.
Got it.
It definitely spoke my language of like, don't just look at the admit pool, break it down into smaller and smaller segments. And this is what we're doing. It's not really putting students in buckets so much as just analyzing every variable that we have in the CRM data set and raising for the counselors. Here's the 18 today that you need to take a look at.
Gotcha. Yep. So I'm thinking for our audience that if you're just getting started with the segmentations, do you want to explain the 3 factors just really explicitly again?
Sure. Well, they were the 3 that worked for that school, and you'll have to look in your data to find out what they are. But for me, they were submitted the FAFSA, visited campus, and had a scholarship interview with the admissions counselor. That 3rd one, it could be replaced with attend a virtual visit or have an email exchange or something, right? But what I did, and when I started at a new school, I looked for what those factors could be. And what I did to kind of demonstrate for the admissions counselors how effective it was to look at students through these segments was I did a point-in-time comparison to the previous year and said, all right, on January 17th of last year, we had 15 students in this bucket, 3 of whom enrolled, and currently we have 19, so we should expect 3 or 4, right? And we could look at the yield rate for point in time year to year and watch it shift throughout the cycle. And it really helped counselors feel that they can move students through into the next step, right? Instead of saying you have to get this student who currently hasn't done a FAFSA, hasn't visited campus, but maybe they have had an interview or come to a virtual event, how do you get them all the way to enrollment? Instead, what we could say to them was just get them to do one of these 2 things, right? Like have them take the next step. And it helped the counselors see, progress is progress and move students forward, and that gets them closer to the end goal, as opposed to just saying, how are you going to get these students to deposit?
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that. You answered my question. I was going to ask about what were the results like. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, not only the results, like, because counselors could feel that they were moving students along. I think one of the more unstated or kind of accidental surprises is that it made counselors be more comfortable focusing on more personal outreach, right? I think a fairly common answer, if you give an admissions counselor their entire admit pool, is not going to be, let me get on the phone and call all of these students, right? For any number of reasons.
Right.
But if you say these 18 students, you need to get through to them and find out, are they in or are they out? Are they going to submit the FAFSA or not? Because it's so manageable, they can think about the number of students individually and figure out how to follow up with each one. And for some, that's still going to be a text message. Some, it's going to be an email. But sometimes, I think I found the counselors were more likely to pick up the telephone and have an actual conversation or a Zoom call with the student or the parent to figure out how to move them along.
Right. I love that. I think I'm hearing resounding similarities around focusing on the student,
Yep.
instead of the number, which is, I feel like correlates with exactly what you're saying. And that not only makes your probably conversions better, but it also makes your job feel better too, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Love that. That's great. I love that you talked about channels a little bit. I was going to be my next question. You said text messaging, calling. Are you seeing any changes in the industry around how to reach students between these steps? I know we went from 3 to 12, and maybe email works better at step 1 and text works better later on in the process. I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah. Well, a truism, you can walk into any admissions office right now. I would challenge anyone to do this and pick a random counselor and say, should we be calling students on the telephone? The counselor is most likely going to say, no, students don't want phone calls, which is not true. It's never been true, right? That's just inaccurate. However, students don't want random phone calls from schools they're not familiar with and when that they're not still interested in. And when you give a counselor a list of 300 students and say, call them all, they're invariably going to talk to or call a lot of students that have no interest anymore. None. However, if you give them a list of students, like I said, 19, 17, 23 that are actively engaged, are opening emails in the last week, are taking actions, and reach out in advance and say, we think we should talk, students will do that. And counselors will do that will be more inclined to do that if they feel that it's not busy work, that it's not wasted, and that the conversations are valuable. As we're coming out of the pandemic or out of the whatever stages of the pandemic we have been in for the last couple of years, on the college side, we've embraced virtual technology in a way that, as you all know, at Concept 3D, we were hesitant to 5 years ago, right? There was a lot of resistance of that. The change, we're going to have to do it all going forward, right? We have to get back to in-person college fairs and high school visits. At the same time, we can't stop some of the virtual outreach that we found some students, not all, some students are really interested in. So there's definitely an increased likelihood that we can have a sit-down conversation with the students and their parents about financial aid because everybody's comfortable using Zoom for something like that in a way that wasn't true in the past.
Right.
But we can't let go of the in-person spending all day in a Starbucks as students kind of rove through for individual conversations. Love
that. Do you have any specific virtual engagement platforms in mind? I know chat, of course, virtual tours is part of that as well. Am I missing anything there?
Yeah, the virtual tours, I found student panels to be really helpful, right? Like if we send a message out to admitted students, essentially saying you're going to be connecting with current college students, not us, right? That's the unstated part.
Right.
That seemed to be more effective than another info session. Students aren't interested in that. They think they can get the information other ways. They won't get it other ways, right? They won't choose to take those other ways. But they are unlikely to come to an info session. Is what I found. I don't think virtual high school visits are the way, but virtual student engagement opportunities are going to be great. The campus tours, the virtual tours, some of the things you're doing, I found that to be almost like a pre-visit activity, right? So
right.
Students, I think 10 years ago would have just planned a big road trip or whatever. Many of those students are kind of doing some of these virtual tour events or virtual campus tours first to narrow down their list of where they're going to go.
Love that. Yep. And we're definitely seeing similar results. And now you can visit many schools as opposed to just a handful. So,
and you can opt out of a visit quickly, right? I've long felt that most visiting college or visiting prospective students, before they even get out of the car, know whether they should continue the visit, right? Like they just get the gut feeling just from pulling in the parking lot. But if they pull up to a campus and they think this is not for me, there's no way the parents or whoever is driving them is going to let them turn around, right? You're going through with the visit. And so these virtual tours and these virtual campus maps and things like that you all are doing, it allows for students to get a feel, get a sense of are they going to like the campus experience, and then go through with it. And if the campus is not for them, they will be able to pick that up, and it's low pressure to kind of get out. They're not already there in town.
Got it. Yeah, and the way I see it from a business perspective is it's a low cost on the family and the student, and it's low cost on the school as well, because it costs money to employ the visitor center and the ambassadors and the student employees there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Switching gears just a little bit. This is a very meaty topic, but I love that we talked about it because it's not something I've heard in one of our other guests. But we talked a little bit about creating projections for your school, and admittedly probably not very versed in this, but I love that we covered it. You're mentioning how you're comparing spreadsheets year over year to create some of these projections, and I'd love to learn more about your process, especially for the audience, on how you go about creating these projections.
Yeah. Well, there's two ways of doing projections, right? So there's the traditional yield projections that we're all used to, and I'll talk about that. But then we're doing something different at EnrollML too, which is kind of a bottoms-up forecasting model, which I'd like to talk about as well. But at any point in the cycle, you can look at your admit pool, your applicant pool, your inquiry pool, whatever it is, and just identify characteristics, behaviors, activities, etc., and do a point-in-time comparison, right? So you can look at your junior inquiry pool and measure how many of those students from 2 years ago ended up enrolling that looked similar, and just apply those yield rates or those conversion rates to the numbers that you have, and that can get you pretty close. It presumes there's no drastic change in student behavior, which I think is a safe assumption, even during the pandemic. While there was a lot of changes in outreach methods and conversations, the yield rate didn't drastically shift and suddenly change. So I think year-to-year projections and applying last year's yield rates to this year's numbers is a reasonable approach. What I was doing with the spreadsheet and the buckets and the 10 different groups was exactly that. Last year we had 87 students in this FAFSA only bucket from in-state, and of those 14 enrolled. This year we have twice as many, so we should expect twice as many enrolled, right?
Right.
So you get there, and as I was going through any given spring, I was probably working with 3 or 4 different types of projections and kind of trying to identify the theme, right? Like they were all producing slightly different numbers, but as from one month to the next, if they all kind of went up, I would say, I'm not sure which one's exactly right, but the trend is right. And if they all went down, it would be time to worry, time to panic, right? So I think that's the type of projection most folks are familiar with. At EnrollML, what we do, and I love this approach. You start the cycle, and in our app, your projection would be, your yield forecast, your high confidence yield forecast, would be a relatively low number because students haven't done anything yet or haven't done much to demonstrate that they're coming through. And as the years go on and students are kind of moving along the ladder, moving along the path towards enrollment, you can start to see that number build. So as the FAFSA gets released, for example, and those applications for financial aid come in, well, that can be an indicator, and that can move the likelihood of students coming in. So that bottoms-up forecasting approach really is a good way of capturing the work already done by the admissions team. And kind of what it is saying is, if you stopped everything now, which of course we would not do, but if you stopped everything now, you could expect this many students, and then relying on those other projection models to kind of show the upper limit, if you will.
Got it. And I don't know too much about EnrollML, but does it is some of the workload and forecasting, are you able to use the tool and have the tool make up for some of the time and energy spent forecasting?
Oh, yes. It's a different way of looking at forecasting. So
okay.
It doesn't replace some of the work I was doing as a director, dean, and VP. It finds time for admissions directors for sure, because it helps you it does the part where I was saying I was taking the spreadsheet and breaking it down. Well, that was probably 4 or 5 hours a week, and I would have to redo it every week and resell it to the admissions counselors and redetermine what the outreach methods would be, et cetera. And all of that time is just found and saved. But the bottoms-up forecasting is a really good way for an admissions director when they're hearing from their counselors, I'm having great conversations with students. I feel real good about this year, even if the visits are down, the FAFSAs are down, or whatever. That's an indicator, right? If your visits are down
right.
and your FAFSAs are down, every admissions director listening to this knows those two things together are a 1-2 punch that you're in real trouble. And what EnrollML does by using the whole kind of data science and machine learning engine evaluating the admit pool, really, one, it bubbles up the students most likely to need interventions. But two, it just gives a raw factual analysis of these students are not doing what they need to do to move to enrollment, period. And then that it changes the conversation with the admissions counselor.
Love it. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that to me.
Yeah.
Well, it was really nice having you on today. Thanks for all your insight and knowledge. It was really good.
Thank you.
Love that the 3 factors moved to 12 plus now. So if anyone is more interested in Enroll ML, Teege can talk about it here in a second. But I'd love to give you a chance to share your LinkedIn, maybe your podcast here as well, if you want to tell the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Teege. I'll probably be the only Teege that shows up, maybe one of 3, right? But it's Teege Mettille. I'm active on LinkedIn. You can message me there. Also, September 20th, we're starting with season 4 of the Admissions Directors Lunchcast. It's a very fun project that we're embarked on. Every week we have 2 different guests, one influencer, one practitioner, focused on a topic specifically related to admissions and recruitment. So it's a fun conversation.
Love it. Great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.